Hello everybody. Today, we're not in good news because the first flight of 7878-8 crashed. First 787 crash ever. Indian airline flight 717. I mean 171. But what really happened in the incident? Well, everybody says the plane have dual engine failure, which was as real, but the air turbine was down, and the flaps were not down, or the slaps and the flaps were not down. But the problem, if the plane was going in without flaps, a warning gets up before your takeoff, what makes you pull the flaps. Well, what even really happened to flight Indian Airline flight 171? Well, they have dual engine failure, and the flap and slaps were knocked down. But maybe the head box, or not the head box, the warning was broken, and the warning was not on, let on a particular reason for the Indian Airline flight 171 to crash into the building. Well, we have two reason for that, because you can, if a plane goes off with its engines, it can glide a bit. If they have a bit a bit altitude, they can glide a bit for maximally 30 minutes. But if the lost engine, the instrument will flash, which make the pilots, and literally 787 have the engines in here. You can see the engines or on or not on, and the percentage, so the plane can glide into it. But even is really a dual engine failure, even the flaps were down, that's not even one answer now. There was the survivation. It was one passenger, literally, for one passengers. A passenger survived the crash by getting a window seat instead of 11A. Well, everybody, you can restart the engines in mid-air. It is possible to do that. But of course, Indian Airline got not the Rolls-Royce engines, but of course they got the J and X engines, which is kind of powerful. They have for burst strikes. It is powerful. They just put burst strikes with flames or whatever reason to make the engine have power, and there was nothing. I think it was in another plane, another flight was going to take off, but rejected takeoff because of engine failure. But we're not talking about that flight now. We're talking about Indian Airline flight 171, which happened to particular reason the flaps were not down. But we can see in the video of the guy in his house just recording, we see kind of slaps and flaps going down at 5 degrees. Well, if you know the takeoff, you can get 5 degrees, 10 degrees, and 7 degrees takeoff width. And the flaps in 5 degrees don't seem that much, but the flaps, which is in here, are down in the engines, the rat or the ram turbine was down, in the situation, of course, is in here above the landing gear, and it sounds like turboprop engines, but they make hydraulics kind of good, flight control good, but the ram turbine didn't have is forced because they don't have like the GNX engines or Rolls Royce engines. Like you can have two engines if they are weak and the ram turbine is down. It kind of go the flight control normally, but if you have 0% of the engines and the two engines are not working, of course the plane will go down because one engine in a small ram turbine, not an engine, cannot save a life with one engine because it is not a Cessna. Of course, it's not a turboprop um, plane, so it can crash at any moment without any engine. Even the ram turbine is down. So the voice recorder was found, and still we're not hearing any voice recorder of these pilots who I don't know who what's the name of pilots, and we know just there was 174 passenger on board, I think. But if you're the flaps are not down, the plane will scream at you and like do 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 or whatever. And you will in performance takeoff, you of course have the flaps in here to know how much calculation you have. But then, of course, engines are GNX engines, the and it was in 787 8, not 10 like this plane. Well, this plane is kind of powerful with their um, Rolls Royce engines, but almost like sound 777. But the GNX engines on Indian Airline Flight 171 was not that powerful, and they have dual engine failure, so you can literally glide to all the way to down. And we saw the landing gear was down, and the video, of course, the pilots didn't even up the landing gear, retract the landing gear, whatever that is. They didn't do that. They just with the landing gear and focus to just to lift the plane up. But when the plane was crashed, there was something like a gear or something was blown off the plane, not the plane itself, because it blown off to big fireball and making the because of the fuel tank, of course. If the plane touches something, boom, big fireball approaches, and because of the fuel tanks and the wings, of course. Well, where are the fuel tanks? Well, the fuel tanks will be in here, of course, and the wings, of course. But how this even will be real if the how that be real if the engine have the engine failure? How the pilot even forgot the flaps? That's from the of course you have it in the checklist. As you can see, when go to checklist now. Wait a sec. Wait a second. Here we go. Checklist. Oh, is this checklist? Yes. This is what? Oh my gosh. System. Oh no. No configuration. There we go. You have before takeoff flaps, of course, to do, and pilots don't go without any checklist pre-flight or before taxiing, before takeoff. Checklist are the most important thing on the whole flight, of course. And the pilots, I think, didn't forget about flaps. I think there was a dual engine failure about the Gen X engines, which happens to the plane. Maybe the pilots didn't forget the flaps. On 5 degrees they made it. Maybe. I'm not saying what happened. This is maybe will be the second mystery or third mystery flight ever uh, of them two mystery flights, Malaysia Airline Flight 70, I think, or 60, and Malaysia Airline Flight 370. Well, everybody, I hope there's survivors, more for survivor, but people know as um, had, there were one survivor. They searched all plane and they didn't find any survivor, and and this the place where the plane crashed. The there was like the stabilizers, the APU, the tail, and everything, but the half of the plane was, I don't know where we going, but I saw videos about it and photos about the Indian Airline Flight 171, and yep, this is what I see what happened. This is not really what happened to Indian Airline Flight 171. And thank you for watching, everybody. If you want to just hit the like button, I'll appreciate it. Bye bye.